Throughout the history of writing, there have been countless scribes who have put their own individual influence on countless alphabets as they've developed throughout the centuries. As a calligrapher, I was trained to look at historic alphabets and learn stroke by stroke how to do them. And like anything else, you need to learn the rules before you can break them. And so, replicating an alphabet that you like is a great way to learn all of the elements of calligraphy. And then there comes a point where the scribe wants to put individuality into the letter form. This class is about putting individuality into a letter form. Now, you may be curious about where the name Romitalic came from, and in my introductory sessions, I'll explain exactly how that name came about. But suffice it to say that it has to do with the difference between historic calligraphic definitions and commercial lettering definitions of the early 20th century. The goal of this course is to walk you through the process that I went through in developing a letter form that my hand wanted to do and could comfortably write. It began with inspiration, and a couple of sources of inspiration came from the early 20th century. One of them was from a hymn book, and the other was from an advertisement by a letterer who practiced in Chicago in the 1920s. So I became fascinated with the Edgar Yates hand. That was my inspiration. And so as I began to develop this letter form, I liked the lyrical qualities that I was seeing. And from these explorations and these experiments, I decided to develop the letter form and create a class. Because I decided to create a class, that led me into more research. And it led me back to some of the origins of the italic form. It also led me through the history of the English copybook, and the help of experts allowed me to make connections between the historic calligraphic hands and the letter form that I was seeing in the 1920s. In putting all of this together, I found out really there's nothing new under the sun. I didn't really create anything unique, and yet at the same time, I did. I created something that was unique to my individual hand. And so, from that initial inspiration, I put away my samples and I took the action of developing a letter form with the characteristics that I wanted. That led me into research as to where these letter forms originally came from, and it allowed me to make connections to the present day letter form that I was working with. And so, in putting all of this together, I found that my goal is to help guide you through the process of analyzing a letter form that you like and creating something specific to you from the letter forms that you're seeing. This class is divided into four parts. The first part is fairly basic. If you're an experienced calligrapher, you probably know a lot of these things, but if you want to see how I'm doing things, then they're brief and hopefully they'll give you a little insight. The second section will contain the story of how this letter form came about, the history of where the letter form came from, and all the way up to the present day letter form and its characteristics. The third section will take you through the basic letter form in the minuscule or lowercase form, A to Z, but we'll do those broken up into letter groups where you can practice with letters that have similar characteristics. That section will close out with an alphabet A to Z. We'll also talk about using alternate letter forms, where and when you could use them. Because letter forms are one thing in an exemplar for you to copy, but it's another thing when you're writing with the letter forms as they interact with each other on your writing surface when you're writing actual words. And so we'll talk about the alternate letter forms that might come into play during the act of writing. And in the last section, we'll come to the capital letters and we'll talk about where the capitals came from, how they were adapted to match the letter form that I had developed. We'll write alphabet sentences and talk about putting all these forms together. I hope you enjoy learning this Romitalic letter form as much as I've enjoyed the journey of developing the letter form, putting together the class, and doing the research to find the connections to bring it all forward into the 21st century. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and we'll see you in class.